Welcome to our Lunch and Learn mini workshop. Today I am here with Tanner Goodlett, and he is a middle school teacher at Old Kentucky Home Middle School in Nelson County. He teaches agriculture, and I was intrigued because I saw an article where he utilized the Purple Plow Challenge through the American Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture. And I was just so interested in learning more about the process and why he chose to use that and kind of the outcomes that the students learned. So welcome, Tanner.
Hey, excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm more than happy to talk about this because it's such an exciting thing that is kind of new and relevant, especially in our time to showcase. So I'm very excited to be here.
Well, real quick, tell us why your background and why you got interested in agriculture education.
Yeah. Okay. I would be lying if I said it doesn't taste just a little bit like vinegar to say that I graduated 11 or 12 years ago from high school. Or when I was starting my high school career, I was placed in an intro to ag class in a very kind of similar story to a lot of people and how they got started. My ag teacher was Mr. Bland Baird at Spencer County. And he kind of gave an opportunity to this really shy, tall, awkward kid in his ag class. And from there, it just kind of tumbled down. I wasn't the most athletic kid. I wasn't always an academic kid, but I really found a home inside the jacket and what FFA kind of gave to me. And so that kind of sparked my passion for agriculture and agriculture education. I ended up working at a middle school while I was still in high school with a 21st century program. Up until I was a senior, I had no idea that I wanted to be an ag teacher. I told myself that I was going to do something that I could go to school for 4 years and try to make sure I had a good income and could take care of myself and a family. And it wasn't until I started at the 21st Century program that I realized I enjoyed working with middle school students. And that kind of brought this passion together. I was like, okay, I really enjoy agriculture and teaching and working with youth. And fortunately, there's a job for that. And so that kind of landed me at UK, starting in 2021 or starting in 2017, graduated in 2021. And I started my career here in Nelson County at Old Kentucky Middle School. The program had been chartered in 2019 during COVID, so it kind of had some rocky starts when I was hired, but we have officially actually gotten to a point where now we've just actually hired our second ag teacher for our middle school program because we've gotten to a point where that many students are interested in agriculture and taking the classes and being involved in it. So that's kind of a big blessing and change that we're kind of going through, but it is an awesome change that's kind of occurred in the last few years. So middle school definitely just has, I think, a special niche. Working with middle school age students is definitely it has so many positives and benefits because they're hungry and they desire to explore different things that are interesting to them. And at a time in their life where failure can be a really big thing where they can be afraid of, it's an awesome way to encourage them to fail in a safe spot and to learn things that they enjoy, explore those passions, as we call them. And that's been a really cool thing to experience. So this will be next year will be my fourth year here. So this will be finishing my third. So I think that was everything. And correct me if I missed anything.
No, that's awesome. I love that more middle schools are doing this, and I've noticed that, the middle school age student is really trying to figure out who they are and, what they believe in, what's important to them. So when we can talk about food, this is just a great age to connect with them. So Purple Plow Challenge, how did you learn about it and what kind of drew you to that?
So Purple Plow Challenge was totally found on a whim. I was actually scrolling through social media one night. I believe it was over summer when I discovered this project when they had kind of pitched their seasonal um, challenge that they came up with, and I started to read. It kind of caught my eye because I saw the Minecraft cow, and I was looking to kind of revamp some of my curriculum in my sixth grade intro to agriculture course. So that's what kind of drew me into that. We've done a project very similar to this in our introduction to agriculture course where my students take a look at Dr. Grandin, where we actually watch her movie and we discuss animal welfare versus animal rights. What does that look like? How do we care for animals in agriculture? How do we care for animals regardless? And then they take those concepts and then apply them to a 3D model. And so in years past, I've had kids build a full-fledged 3D farmscape of what does it look like to have curved chutes and solid walls and solid flooring, and what does a grazing plan look like. And so when I found this and it kind of showed up, like I said, on my Facebook feed, I was like, well, this is kind of awesome. I think that middle school kids are actually like in that age bracket where Minecraft is a really fun thing for them, that they enjoy. And that just kind of started my snowball effect where I started to do a little bit more digging. I found out that there's a research component to it where they have a paper that they submit, and that they were challenged. Minecraft was an option that they could use, but they were challenged in whatever way to show a 3D model. And when my students found out that Minecraft was an option, that was, I mean, I had so many students. I think in total we submitted 23, 24 projects. All but 22 chose, so two just chose a physical model, compared to the Minecraft education. So that's what kind of drew me to it. And it also was a really excellent way for a community assessment, is what we call it, at my school. So we have four through my introduction to agriculture class. And one of them is the end of our animal science unit, which is a cumulative study of all these things we've talked about. So what does it look like to take care of animals? And it was a perfect opportunity to explore what farms of the future are going to need to look like. So we talked about what our population is going to grow to. We're going to talk about how food impacts how where we live affects how we live. So the kids had to take those concepts and apply. Well, if I'm going to make my farm in Kentucky, then I need to look at these breeds. So when we talk about breeds in class, they could apply those concepts. So there was just a whole wealth of knowledge that could kind of be accumulated into this project. So I was drawn in very easily.
Well, good. Well, I mean, the article is there for teachers that kind of want to go learn kind of the process more in depth. But what was some of the takeaways from your students? Did they have any aha moments?
I think the aha moments that I started to see from the students was this concept of starting to think about all those things that aren't necessarily on the forefront of their mind when they hear about building this model, because the things that they had to take into account that the Purple Plow Challenge, I feel like, laid out really well for them, was things like, how is society going to view this farm? So if someone were to come visit your farm, how are they going to view it? How are people going to look at it through a lens who have never connected with agriculture? In addition to that, economic, like for them to think about, because in Minecraft you get a whole wealth of inventory that you can use to build your project. And so they had to actually make those mental connections to say, oh, well, we can't really afford to build it out of stone, but we could use wood, we could use these types of materials. So for them to do that mental math, I think was super cool. And then in addition, applying those concepts like what we just talked about that are kind of in traditional agriculture classes. So things like breeds of livestock, where they're best suited in the world. So before we actually built the project, we talked about, in Kentucky, we primarily raise Black Angus cattle. And why is that? Well, they're good mothers. They're great for our environment. They're great for our temperament in our area. They're good for hills. They're good for flatland, all those things. But then I had students who were like, well, we want to build our farm in Texas or Oklahoma. So they actually had to delve into, well, what does Texas and Oklahoma agriculture look like? So seeing them kind of take off those rose colored glasses and move from a very individual, narrow-minded perspective to a large perspective of how much goes into a farming operation was really, really special. My students had to learn, how many gallons of water do cattle drink, and how much do we need? My students in my spring semester are actually working on it right now, and some of the aha moments that I've seen are, cows drink that much water. How do we provide water in a field? Well, here are your options that farmers use. So seeing them make those connections because they had to apply it to their farm was really special. All of them learning that, any cow calf pair is going to need 1.5 acres of land typically. So then taking that number and multiplying it by how many cows they wanted to have. So they were applying math concepts, literacy, geography, scientific concepts. So it was just a wealth of knowledge that I feel like that they got. So I was super, super pleased with some of the moments that came out of it.
Then there is a different challenge per, I guess, per school half. So there's usually a fall challenge and a spring challenge. So do you see yourself wanting to look at some of the other challenges, or do you want to do this one like every year?
I think that, and that's a great question. That has come up in my mind, is that now that I'm comfortable with this one, do I, kind of shift and change to alter it? but I also have seen some of the other challenges, and I've thought how I could apply those to my other classes. So one of the ones that I saw that we didn't get to compete in for the spring, but it was like a pollution challenge to stop the pollution, and they had to create a 3D model of some sort of architect piece that would help for pollution matters. So I thought, what an awesome way to put that in an NRES unit to take that on. So really, it has given me a wealth of resources and curriculum that I feel like I have at my fingertips to pull into wherever. And now that I'm familiar with how the challenge works and how you submit them and how you, all of the curriculum is kind of there for you to follow, I'm more comfortable, I feel like, to choose that to anything that I do. I think that my students would be very angry with me if I did not get to, because we've had some recruiting events in these last few weeks where my sixth graders have been spilling the beans to all the new fifth graders coming in saying, you get to do your Minecraft farms, like Mr. Good, like that's one of the things that you get to do. And I mean, the numbers of kids that are interested in signing up for classes because they're hearing of all these things that we get to do has been through the roof. And that's really exciting for me, because if I could hook them with that, then that means that the rest comes naturally. So you can fill them in with all of those other good things about Kentucky agriculture, which is something we do in sixth grade. Um, we use a lot of the my old Kentucky home feeds me, and because we're my old Kentucky home, it's kind of a perfect opportunity to talk about that. So it's just been really exciting to see where I could fit it. But I definitely think that my students would probably pitchfork me if I didn't offer this again. But I definitely have been exploring other ways to put in all of their other challenges, because it's a way for them to take the concepts that we're learning in class and apply it to the outside world and see like an actual impact. Like when we were told that we were the young lady at Farm Bureau told me that they had a hard time picking a winner, and so they had two first places. And when we found out that we were both first places, I mean, my kids were tickled pink, and that was something that they are interested in doing again in seventh grade. They want to know what other challenges are out there. So seeing them hungry for that type of thing has just been really exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. So even though you are an agriculture classroom, I think it would be good to mention that this is not just for agriculture classrooms. So any classroom that wants to utilize STEM learning.
Absolutely. And I think that there's so many opportunities when you look at it in the way that you can pitch that idea to your classes. I mean, the literacy component that came from it, the scientific component that came from it, the research ability, all of those are such valuable skills that can be applied in so many different classrooms, and especially in STEM. Um, like them tinkering with it, I think that's one of the best things, is figuring out what works and what doesn't. Kind of like we discussed as healthy places to fail. I think STEM classrooms at CTE offer such an awesome opportunity for that, but this could be explored in so many other ways. Absolutely.
So did you collaborate with any of the other teachers there at the school on this project?
Yeah, so one of the things that it kind of lined up perfectly, because we the sixth grade that was doing it, they just kind of were talking a little bit about the scientific method in their regular science classes, but they're also in their eco-friendly unit. So some of those concepts that they were talking about, like carbon footprint and how do we ensure that we're taking care of our environment, they had to apply those concepts when they were building their farm. So they kind of got actually a lot of their inspiration from one of the science teachers, Miss Bowling, in building windmills. So they brought up this idea of, well, how do windmills work? So then they did more research in their classes, and hydropower and all these things that they could add to their farm. They explored honeybees and how they could operate and use those to help pollinate their greenhouses and their crops, and taking manure and then spreading it onto their fields. There was just so much that went into it that so yes, to answer your question, we did collaborate with the science, and then one of their literacy components, we actually connected with an English teacher, and she kind of helped them put in format some of their papers and stuff, and how to pull in resources that they had used, and how to put all of those thoughts that were running around in their little middle school brains into a well formatted paper to turn. So.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like our teachers to know?
I just think that as times have changed, because as someone who, I graduated in 2017, Minecraft had just kind of come onto the realm, and wasn't as gigantic for my generation. But for these kids, I mean, I didn't have to do any of the troubleshooting, because these guys are the experts in that type of thing. Like, this is their bread and butter. And I think it really just kind of goes to show, when you can get kids excited about learning the outcomes and the things that can come from that, I mean, it's just second to none. Like, they left my classroom and I mean, I actually got emails from teachers saying, I just want to make sure that you've given these students permission to work on this when they get done with stuff in class. They are eager to perform. They are eager to work on it outside of school. Um, the amount of excitement that came from it is something that I just want to see in everything that we're able to do in the classroom. And to be able to flip that switch and get them for that buy-in is something that's not always easy. But now that I've seen the other side of it and how hard we worked for it, I just know that I'm like, okay, that's what I want to keep doing. So I just think that would be my big takeaway is what other ways can I tweak my other lessons to kind of get that turning point to get kids to buy in like they did for this one.
So do any of your students want to be farmers now?
I have a ton that have exported and then actually gone on to take this. So one of the other end of the year projects is they could choose to build like a model scape of their own farm and how they could critique it and make it better. And I had one student who, when we incubated chickens a few weeks ago, he started playing around with models of how he could, make his chicken coop a little bit better. And he made his model first in Minecraft before Dad went home, and they started buying lumber to go build it. And that story I've kind of held on to. That's been one that I've cherished. Those type of things, just because of a basis of some silly game that uses 3D blocks and an ag class, like that was just awesome. So those types of things have been really special. Yes. But
Yeah.
I do have quite a mix of urban students and rural students. But the big thing that I talk about in my class is that I know not all of them will go on to be farmers, or work in the agriculture field, but they will go on to be consumers of agriculture, and they are going to have to go through a grocery store and know the difference between this pack of ground beef and this. And at that one point, that started as a cow in a field, and a farmer had to nurture and care for it. I want them to kind of see that whole process, which is why we really start with the temple grain, and so that way they kind of get that mindset of, oh, now I see why like we take care of our animals, why it makes sense for us to make sure that we are the best stewards of the environment and those types of things. So a lot of questions to explore and to just kind of hit the iceberg with it and keep them coming back for more.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing your passion with your students and being a teacher. We need more people like you.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come and share about it. This was an awesome and exciting thing I was looking forward to. And if more teachers can hop on the crazy train, then I'm all about it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and you have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Miss Ella.
Bye.